The other animals humans eat, use in science, hunt, trap, and exploit in a variety of other ways have a life of their own that is of importance to them apart from their utility to us. They are not only in the world, they are aware of it and also of what happens to them. And what happens to them matters to them. Each has a life that fares experientially better or worse for the one whose life it is. Like us, they bring a unified psychological presence to the world. Like us, they are somebodies, not some things. In these fundamental ways, the non-human animals in labs and on farms, for example, are the same as human beings. And so it is that the ethics of our dealings with them and with one another must rest on some of the same fundamental moral principles. At its deepest level, an enlightened human ethic is based on the independent value of the individual. To treat human beings in ways that do not honor their independent worth, to reduce them to the status of tools or models or commodities, for example, is to violate that most basic of human rights, the right to be treated with respect. The philosophy of animal rights demands only that logic be respected, for any argument that plausibly explains the independent value of human beings implies that other animals have this same value and have it equally. And any argument that plausibly explains the right of humans to be treated with respect also implies that these other animals have this same right and have it equally also. As a result of selective media coverage in the past, to which this evening's debate is a notable and praiseworthy exception, the general public has tended to view advocates of animal rights in exclusively negative terms. We are anti-intellectual, anti-science, anti-rational, anti-human. We stand against justice and for violence. The truth, as it happens, is quite the reverse. The philosophy of animal rights is on the side of reason. For it is not rational to discriminate arbitrarily. And discrimination against non-human animals is demonstrably arbitrary. It is wrong to treat weaker human beings, especially those who are lacking in normal human intelligence, as tools or models, for example. It cannot be rational, therefore, to treat other animals as if they were tools, models, and the like, if their psychology is as rich as or richer than these human beings. The philosophy of animal rights is pro, not anti-science. This philosophy is respectful of our best science in general and of evolutionary biology in particular. The latter teaches that, in Darwin's words, humans differ from many other animals in degree and not in kind. Questions about line drawing to one side, it is obvious that the animals used in laboratories, raised for food, and hunted for pleasure or trapped for profit, for example, are our psychological kin. This is not fantasy. This is fact, supported by our best science. The philosophy of animal rights stands for, not against, justice. We are not to violate the rights of the few so that the many might benefit. Slavery allows this. Child labor allows this. All unjust social institutions allow this, but not the philosophy of animal rights, whose highest principle is that of justice. The philosophy of animal rights stands for peace and against violence. The fundamental demand of this philosophy is to treat humans and other animals with respect. This philosophy, therefore, is a philosophy of peace, but it is a philosophy that extends the demand for peace beyond the boundaries of our species. For there is an undeclared war being waged every day against countless millions of non-human animals. To stand truly for peace is to stand firmly against their ruthless exploitation. And what, aside from the common menu of media distortions, what will be said by the opponents of animal rights? Will the objection be that we are equating animals and humans in every respect, when in fact humans and animals differ greatly? But clearly we are not saying that humans and other animals are the same in every way, that dogs and cats can do calculus, or that pigs and cows enjoy poetry. What we are saying is that, like humans, many other animals have an experiential welfare of their own. In this sense, we and they are the same. In this sense, therefore, despite our many differences, we and they are equal. Will the objection be that we are saying that every human and every animal has the same rights, that chickens should have the right to vote, and pigs the right to ballet lessons? But of course we are not saying this. All we are saying is that these animals and humans share one basic moral right, the right to be treated with respect. Will the objection be that because animals do not respect our rights, we therefore have no obligation to respect their rights either. But there are many human beings who have rights and are unable to respect the rights of others. Young children and the mentally enfeebled and deranged of all ages. In their case, we do not say that it is perfectly all right to treat them as tools or models or commodities because they do not honor our rights. On the contrary, we recognize that we have a duty to treat them with respect. What is true of cases involving these human beings is no less true of cases involving other animals. Will the objection be that if other animals do have more, even if other animals do have moral rights, there are other more important things that need our attention? World hunger and child abuse, for example, apartheid, drugs, violence to women, the plight of the homeless. After we take care of these problems, then we can worry about animal rights. This objection misses the mark, for the rank and file of the animal rights movement is composed of people whose first line of service is human service. Doctors, nurses, and other healthcare professionals, people involved in a broad range of social services, from rape counseling to aiding victims of child abuse or famine or discrimination, teachers at every level of education, ministers, priests, rabbis. As the lives of these people demonstrate,
Dr. Reagan, could you do your best to bring your remarks to a close?
The choice thoughtful people face is not between either helping humans or helping other animals. One can do both. We should do both. Will the objection be finally that no one has rights, not any human being and not any other animal either, but rather that right and wrong are a matter of acting to produce the best consequences, being certain to count everyone's interest and to count equal interests equally? This moral philosophy, utilitarianism, has a long and venerable history. Influential men and women, past and present, are among its adherents, and yet it is a bankrupt moral philosophy if ever there was one. Are we seriously to inquire into the interest of the rapist before declaring rape wrong? Should we ask the child molester whether his interest would be frustrated before condemning the molestation of our children? Remarkably, a consistent utilitarianism demands that we ask these questions, and in so demanding relinquishes any claim on our rational assent. With regard to the philosophy of animal rights, then, is it rational, impartial, scientifically informed? Does it stand for peace and against injustice? To all these questions, the answer is an unqualified yes. And as for the objections that are raised against this philosophy, are those who accept it able to offer rational, informed answers? Again, the answer is yes. In the battle of ideas, the philosophy of animal rights wins, its critics lose. It remains to be seen which side emerges as the victor in the ongoing political battle between what is just and what is not. Thank you.
Most of our transactions, one with another, can be judged in moral grounds, but cannot be talked about in terms of rights, because there are no rights governing the way we ought to treat our children, the way we ought to treat our colleagues, except in the extreme cases where there are laws to prevent committing criminal offences against either our children or our colleagues. Now, in the case of humans, people sometimes argue for a Bill of Rights. Now, so when we talk about animals, we're talking about vast numbers of creatures who have nothing in common whatsoever, except that they're non-human. And personally, I rather object to lumping all these creatures together and thinking of them as one sort of creature. A Bill of Rights for animals would indeed be a very weird Bill of Rights, because the purpose of a Bill of Rights is equality. And are we really convinced that a Bill of Rights should treat the needs to live of a virus as of exactly equal importance as the need to live of, let's say, a young lamb or a young
Most
hen?
people would say no. I think most animal writers are really arguing that the closer animals are to humans, biologically speaking, evolutionarily speaking, that is, the more rights they should have. So where does the cut-off come? Primates, mammals, vertebrates. Now, the moment you concede that question, you realize that the decision is entirely arbitrary, that it is we as humans who are conferring rights on animals, not the animals themselves. And put like that, you can see that the debate is not like that about human rights, about women's rights, about black people's rights, in which the oppressed subjects of history stand up and demand justice and equality. It is an argument about how we, as humans, should behave. And it's just here that the biological discontinuity between humans and other animals becomes important. Our concern for how we treat other species springs out of our very humanness as biologically and as socially constructed creatures. We don't expect cats to debate the rights of mice, so the issue is not really about animal rights at all, but about the duties that we have just because we are human. I'm quite sure we do have such duties, to behave kindly to other animals with a minimum of violence and cruelty, not to damage or take their lives insofar as it can be avoided, just as we have duties to the planet's ecology in general. But these duties are limited by an overriding duty to other humans. I have a much-loved and exceedingly beautiful cat, but if I had to choose between saving her life and saving the life of my child, I would unhesitatingly choose my child. What's more, I'd save any human child at the expense of my cat, and my cat at the expense of a fish. And so would the vast majority of people in this room. That is species loyalty, speciesism if you like, and I am proud to be a speciesist.
It's certainly undesirable for us to, from some lofty position, to define the rights of others. There has recently been an attempt by the United Nations, a successful attempt, to swear a convention of children's rights. Now, I'm fairly certain that children themselves were not consulted. Otherwise, instead of the right to go to school, they might have asked for the right not to go to school. They might have asked for the right to have a parent of either sex, for divorce to be outlawed, for the right to have 4 grandparents, for the right to have sexual experiences with adults. Who knows what they would have been, what they would have asked for as their rights. The fact is that adult human beings conferred on them a bunch of rights, which in fact tend to be the rights that rich people want for their children, the right not to go to work, whereas the children of the poor might well have liked a right to a basic wage, seeing as they have no choice but to go to work. Now, it seems to me very curious if we're going to decide what the rights of animals should be, because animals, as far as I can understand them, are speciesist. And as animals, we also are speciesist. That Gaia
of all tonight, I call on Tom Reagan to sum up the arguments for the motion.
Well, I couldn't have a more impossible task, since I don't remember ever hearing so many weak arguments in such a short period of time. But we believe, and also a good bit of rudeness as well, but we believe that the weight of the evidence when partially assembled is on the side of animal rights. People say, well, where do you draw the line? Which animals? This bespeaks a profound failure to read the philosophical literature in which this has been discussed over the last 10 years, something no educated person taking part in this debate should take any pride in. I would have thought I was listening to a collection of sophomores at times. It takes my breath away. What happened to Peter Singer? What happened to Stephen Clark? What happened to my own work? What happened to Bernie Rowland's work? I have no evidence at all that anyone representing the opposition has read so much as a single page of this philosophical work. I have no evidence. I have no evidence. None. No evidence. None. I have not heard a single member of the opposition challenge a single argument of the philosophers and the theologians. What I have heard instead are things like the following. There are no human rights, only legal rights. Only if the law recognizes them do we have rights. This is again part of the utilitarian tradition. Bentham, moral rights, nonsense upon stilts, but that's not part of another major part of Western moral tradition, and that is that the law's obligation is to accord with the moral rights that people have independent of the law, anterior to the law. The tradition of the natural rights theorist, the tradition on which the animal rights philosophy stands. We are claiming that there are moral rights apart from the law. And again, that the obligation of the law is to recognize, respect, and protect those rights. We are told by Professor Rose that we are bestowing rights upon the animals. They are not claiming them for themselves, and so these are unlike other rights movements, unlike the movements on part of black people, unlike the movement on the part of women. But what shall we say of children, Professor Rose? They claim not their rights. What shall we say of the enfeebled and the deranged, Professor Rose? They claim not their rights. I take it to be a necessary implication of Professor Rose's view that they have them not according to the philosophy of animal rights, however, which grounds protects the rights of these human beings. Germaine Greer says, we are not in a position to say what is in the interest of children, that we are acting pridefully, perhaps a little arrogantly, when we bestow rights upon them. I find this scarcely credible. Granted, there may be some areas in which people of goodwill can disagree, but to think that we know nothing about what is good for children, and to think that we therefore should not mandate that what is in their interest be protected as a matter of right, takes my moral breath away.
Could you come to your conclusion now, please,
Yes.
Dr. Reagan?
Because the same reasoning applies. We know not enough about the other animals, according to Germaine Greer. Again, scarcely credible in view of what we know of by Richard Ryder's work and Peter Singer's work and the work of other people, the work of ethologists and so on. We know nothing about what is beneficial to other animals. We know nothing scientifically about what is harmful, detrimental to other animals. Where are these people living? In the end, then, what I sense is the following: that the issues have not been joined, that there is still the lingering suspicion and, I dare say, belief that we are the master species. Oh, we have rights. It's the rest of creation that doesn't. Thank you very much.